He conducted his life monotonously and as punctually as a clock. Early in the morning he appeared in the foyer, swept it, and disappeared in his room, where he had tea or coffee from some special little samovar, whose design and method of boiling the water remained a secret to all and a subject of insatiable curiosity. Then Peacock walked out onto the stairs in his livery and went to see my aunt. The nature of their report or conversation was not known to anyone and was gossiped about by everyone in the most impossible, outlandish manner. The conversation lasted an hour or so, after which Peacock reappeared on the stairs, but no longer empty-handed. He had with him the accounting book, which he placed under the oilskin on his desk, put on his sash, picked up his baton, and unlocked the front entrance. Having completed this ceremony, he settled in his wide armchair upholstered in red morocco and went over the accounting book, making notes with a pencil in a separate notebook of his own. Peacock occupied himself in this manner until 10 o'clock. With the last stroke of the clock, he propped his baton against a column, traded his tricone hat for an embroidered cap, and in this uniform came out into the courtyard through the gates. In passing, he silently struck the groundskeeper's door with his fist. Two big fellows instantly popped out, one carrying an axe and the other with a pair of pliers. Both of them bowed to him respectfully. He silently bowed in return and continued on. The groundskeepers, armed with the axe and the pliers, silently followed him, keeping a respectful distance. Peacock headed in the direction determined for him by the accounting book he carried, open over one arm. I can barely give you even the weakest notion of the impression this morning procession of peacocks made on the entire house, as he walked on accompanied by his two minions. Angry, disdainful, but more often troubled gazes were leveled at Peacock from every window of the long annexes in the inner courtyard occupied by poor tenants. He was often followed by profanities and acerbic mockery, and more frequently by curses and tearful wails. Peacock paid them no attention. He followed his course like a planet in the line of other celestial bodies in accordance with its rotation, and did not respond to any of the expressions of ire or regret. This procession meant Peacock was coming to collect monthly rent from the tenants of the separate apartments, into which Auntie had split up all the inner annexes, calculating that smaller apartments would always yield more income than larger ones, because they would be taken up by poor people with far fewer demands when it came to good taste and even cleanliness than the rich. Why Peacock's procession appeared so imposing and excited such terror could be observed if we followed him up one of the dark, narrow staircases he climbed accompanied by his assistants. He paused by a certain door and rang. The door was not opened right away, but he was patient and did not fret. He could hear whispering, scurrying, hiding, and weeping, and remained where he was. Then he rang again, not very loudly, but so firmly there was no keeping him out, and the door was reluctantly opened. Peacock took off his cap and entered calmly with his book, as his associates waited on the landing. When he emerged 3 minutes later, one could see him placing something behind the broad cuff of his colorful livery. This was his way of putting away his mistress's money before he went on to another apartment, where this particular day was the day for paying rent for the following month. The groundskeepers followed him again, axe and pliers in tow, and waited for his instructions. Everyone waited for his instructions, and prayed not to have to hear them. What sort of instructions? Here's what. Peacock emerged from one apartment without anything to put behind his cuff. He merely nodded, and Peacock's two companions instantly appeared next to one of the windows of the apartment. The axe and the pliers did their job with indescribable speed. The window frame vanished. A female scream and a child's crying could be heard from the now empty window casing as Peacock sailed on, his voyage to be occasionally interrupted by more vanishing window frames. More screams and tears followed, as indoor warmth billowed out of the empty windows, the freezing poor attempting in vain to keep and preserve some of it by rags hanging from sticks and brooms. The further into the inner courtyards, the higher up the staircases, the more frequently Peacock's shattering orders were repeated. I wanted to say, and more decisively, but nothing Peacock ever did was indecisive. Having knocked on every door he was expected to visit that day, he sailed back, and the groundskeepers carried the pulled-out windows, which Peacock personally locked up in a special cupboard under the stairs, after which he calmly settled in his tall armchair with the bronze dragon, and read the Bee and other newspapers received at the house, and invariably perused by Peacock first.